Ta-da! Okay, so we have a full agenda today. Can you share? I guess I could share too. Hopefully everybody saw our agenda update that we sent out. So next up, we're going to do some appreciations and shout outs. So we can start this meeting off with some good feelings. I'm going to do a very brief ECSA data update. And then right after that, the PSU team is going to be doing an Elmo presentation, reviewing the tool. And then Nancy will be presenting about Jumpstart Kindergarten. So it's a very full agenda today. So we're going to jump right in with our appreciations and shout outs. So feel free to come off mute or to put things in the chat. If there's anything you want to appreciate. Anybody?
I do. This is Begonia with Early Learning Washington County. I have a lot of appreciation for my colleague Danny from Clackamas because she actually came all the way to Washington County to help us to facilitate the discussion about the selection criteria for Preschool Promise. It was a neutral party that helped us to have this discussion with our community, and her facilitation skills are astonishing. So I'm not selling you, I'm not making any sale with Danny, okay, but she's amazing. Thank you, Danny, for that.
That's amazing. Thanks for sharing that, Begonia. I'm singing the Jeopardy song in my head just for a little bit. It might feel like really awkward right now, you know, and it's really quiet. That's what I'm doing.
I'll say something, Hillary. So I have a shout out to Carrie Wells from 211 Info, who came all the way to Joseph and Baker City and Ontario from Portland to talk to us about 211 Info.
Awesome.
She's awesome. Did a great job.
That's great. Thanks for sharing that, Kelly.
I just want to shout out to everyone who's had opportunity to meet with myself and Michelle and Hillary as I start transferring general coordination of hubs over to them. And you've all been really generous with your time and giving us background about yourself and your role and your hub and what makes your hub unique and where you are in all your work. And it's always, like, I know I say it all the time, but it's always really inspiring to hear that and just to get your updates. And I really appreciate the just grace that you've had with this transition and continue to have. And just how welcoming you've been to both of them.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Second that wholeheartedly. I see Michelle nodding as well. Okay. I'm doing it. If you have last minute ones, you can pop them into the chat, but I'm moving on to our very brief ECSA update. So as a reminder, this is the document. It's due December 1st. Michelle and I are putting together a guidance document to go out next week. We hope that's going to be helpful as you start to do the work. If you already have specific questions, you've started to do some of this stuff, you've looked at it and you're like, I'm not sure what this is, or I don't know where to get this information, please pop those into the chat so we can incorporate those into the document that we'll be preparing. Erin is also going to be making a video to help answer some questions. And the ELD is also planning to provide childcare availability data. So that's slots in both publicly funded and non-publicly funded childcare per region later this month, mid to late October, which will also include the FCCO data, which that's the data the CCRNR has access to. So if you have questions that you feel like you really need answered, please pop those into the chat. Or if those questions come up after we send out that guidance document, you can always reach back out to us. But we do want you to all the words are coming out at the same time. We wanted to let you know that there is a guidance document coming, there is a video coming, and we would like your questions so that we can help answer those ahead of time. But we will happily take them afterwards as well. Okay, so with that, now PSU team, I am handing over the reins to you to talk about Elmo.
Let's see. There you go, Beth.
Sorry. Hi, everybody. So quick introductions from our side. I'm Beth Green, and it's great to see all of you. I'm from Portland State University, she, her pronouns. I'm the Director of Early Childhood and Family Support Research, and for purposes of today, co-PI with Catherine Pears on the Preschool Development Grant Statewide Needs Assessment that we're currently revamping again. And other folks who are here today to share with you are Lizzie, you want to go?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Lizzie Tremaine, she, they pronouns. You may see me in my ELD hat as a research analyst, and today I'm here with my PSU hat, working with Beth on support you on updating Elmo and sharing it with you today to see how it could be a useful tool as you put together your ECSA work.
All right, and then our fabulous designer, web designer, I don't know, expert, web guy, David.
Hi, everybody. My name is David McClendon. I'm with January Advisors, and we're a data science consulting company, and we've been working with PSU and ELD for a number of years now. This project dates pre-pandemic, so it's been great to see how this tool has changed and grown, and excited to talk with you about it.
All right, thank you. All right, so I'm going to share my screen if I can do that. Looks like I can. Oops. There we go. Oops. I had it and then it went away. What was up with that? All right. Okay. So for those of you who might not remember or might not have been around when we last talked about Elmo, we're not talking about the Sesame Street character, although we think it's the best acronym ever. It actually stands for the Early Learning Map of Oregon. So this is a web-based platform that allows exploration of a variety of different kinds of state, regional, and community data that we're going to walk through again today, give you a brief overview. I can go actually to the next slide. Let me see here, slideshow, there we go. We'll talk about a little bit of the background and the purpose of Elmo. Then David and Lizzie are going to do a little walkthrough of some of the general overview of Elmo, because many of you probably this is new, and then some updates around things that have changed since Elmo was last rolled out and updated. We'll talk a little bit about what's coming next and what is and isn't currently, how Elmo is and isn't useful, I think, to your current project around doing your ECSA, and then some next steps for some technical assistance around data that we're going to be trying to provide over the next month or so as you're working on those projects. So without further ado, I will go on. And if somebody could monitor the chat, if questions come up, feel free to let me know. Okay, so ELMO, the Early Learning Map of Oregon, is a web-based platform for bringing together data and allowing both visual and geographical exploration of that data. It's really designed for folks like you, our state and regional partners, as they're trying to get data or learn about specific communities. And again, we'll talk about the different kinds of data, but it allows you to map populations related to early childhood that may be of particular interest, such as understanding where there might be geographic consolidation of a variety of community risk factors, where your primary early childhood populations live, some information about the early childhood programs that are available in different parts of your communities and across the state. And then some functionalities around looking at things that have changed over time. So it really allows you to look at factors related to community risk and resilience, childcare workforce, some overarching questions related to needs and services. It gives you some broad patterns of availability of childcare, although the current data are a little bit old, and we're going to be talking about some updated data that's coming to you straight from the ELD that we recommend using for your ECSAs. I do want to also say that, like any data set like this, so it's thinking about administrative or high-level population data, which is really just one very limited and always problematic way to look at data. It's not give you the answer of where or what kind of childcare do we need most in our community. That requires a lot more deep listening to communities, as you all know, but hopefully this will give you at least some information to guide maybe who or where you want to do listening and engagement with to learn more about family needs. Okay. All right, so I'm just going to give you a little bit of an overview of what's coming, and then I'm going to turn it over to Lizzie and David to actually show you the map. We'll talk about, first of all, what's in it, what's the content and structure of the map, how is it set up, what domains and variables are in there, some fixes and updates, and hopefully a little bit of focus on some things that we think, based on some information we got from the hubs, or from the ELD, I'm sorry, around what your priority populations are, where that information might be that could be useful to you. We'll talk about how you can look at the numbers and the data based on either number of children, for example, or number of families, or percents. You can look at how many children in my community are there, or you can look at what's the percent of the under 18 population that happens to be 0 to 5. You can look by geography at multiple different levels, and then you can it has some function to be able to look at a couple of variables at a time if you want to understand, say, where do children living in poverty, where do they live? And making this up, but where do children living in poverty who happen to be Hispanic or Latine, where do they tend to live? And then again, some different functions around some analytic questions, some data over time, and the download function, which is how you actually can get data out that then you could manipulate in different ways for your own local planning purposes. Okay.
Beth, there's a
go ahead.
A question in the inbox, and it looks like Lizzie is also answering in the chat box.
Okay.
Has Elmo added the overlay data of health/social complexity from OHA? And Lizzie says, we've not added the complexity data from OHA to Elmo, and taking note of this as something to look into.
We talked with, I'm forgetting the person's name, about that data, and matching it onto Elmo was extremely complicated, especially because of the way that they put their data together. But it is something that's on our radar as like a future. Again, this would be great information if we could get it. Okay. If there's any other questions, happy to take those. If not, I can turn it over to David and to Lizzie to walk through the map. And then,
Great. Should I share my screen?
yeah, that's probably better.
We'll talk about Lizzie. Okay. Great. And Lizzie, do you want me to give sort of an overview first, and then you can chime in, interrupt me when there's things you want to highlight?
Yes, that sounds great, David. Thanks.
Okay. So this is the page you'll land on when you enter the site, if you've seen it before, which has some information about what this map's intended and not intended to do, other kinds of questions you can answer with the map. We've also, since we launched it maybe 2-ish years ago, we also have a ability to switch languages up here, if that's of interest to you or any of your colleagues. The main page, though, is on the map, which is always going to have the most up-to-date data. Some of the data has been updated every year. Some of it was updated last time, but is not updated this time yet. And so just wanted to say that. There's also always a how to use this map if you forget how to do what certain some of these things do. If you want to scroll through and see like, oh, what do these particular switches do? There's always a lot of helpful info too. If there's like, forget, what does the select geography do? Or what does this map legend mean? There's a lot of help along the way to highlight what that is and what, in some cases, like how recent the data is. So when you land on this page, so there's the first thing you can do is select the level of geography. So we have not all the data is available at every level of geography, but a lot of it is, especially at the hub region. So we have county, hub, CCR&R region, school district, elementary school zones. And I know for that, last time we were using a state level file that was from 2016, which was the last time we had statewide school catchment zones. But now we have a more recent updated file. So that should be updated and more reflect the actual boundaries of your community. In addition, we also have zip codes, which I know can be useful, and census tracts, which provide some level of detail, but I don't know which census tract I live in. And so it's one of those things that can be a little less useful, but can give you some more granular data for some of the metrics. So if you switch, for instance, between county, or if you wanted to look at school district, you can then see how this particular fill layer, which is kind of or another word for it is like a heat map, which shows, in this case, we're looking at the percentage of children 0 to 17 who are Hispanic Latino. And so you can see how the legend here will change and update as well. One thing that we've removed since last time was that previously we had set some of the census data, which has a margin of error. In some cases, there was a margin of error that we were being really conservative and sort of making NA or not applicable, those where the margin of error was pretty wide. And so we've I think heard feedback on that and removed that constraint. So there should be more detailed information on a lot of this for elementary school zones and school districts and other lower levels of geography.
And this change, we hope, is particularly responsive to folks who are working in hubs that are less populated. And those are the areas where, since the population is smaller, the census estimates of a lot of the things that we care about are a little less stable. We're a little less confident. So we were suppressing ones that we were really less confident about, but that can be really frustrating as somebody who's looking at their region on a map and seeing a lot of red and not able to make any decisions or get any value out of the tool. So since this information is available on the census websites, it's not something that they're recommending no one make use of. We decided to no longer do that suppression. So hopefully those of you from the lesser populated areas of the state I hope this means that perhaps it will feel more useful to be able to look at the map. So that's where that came from.
Great. Great. So one of these initial things, you can look at the different categories that we have for the different data elements. I will say sometimes and so you can see we have, community and family characteristics, early care and education and program types and capacity, early care and work and education workforce information, risk and resiliency factors, as well as school readiness and early school success indicators. So when you switch between these, the selections you can have over here also change, and default to the one at the top there. One thing I do want to point out is that as you go to lower levels of geography, the choices you have up here do get restricted. So we're only going to show you those that are actually available at that level of geography. So I think if you want to get a sense, first off, of like, what are all the available indicators, I would start at something like the county level or the hub region level, rather than the school district or elementary school zone, where there's fewer data points there. Another thing you can do.
Sorry, I just not to interrupt, but which indicators are available? Does that have a geographical information?
Yeah, so this is sort of the big dive here. If you wanted to know what is available at elementary school zones, this will tell you all the indicators that are there, and you can also search here if you wanted to look at specifically those that deal with Hispanic or Latino populations. It'll give you that information as well. But that's sort of the second place to start too, if you really want to just see what's available there. But I know some people initially are frustrated on the map, and even when we were building it, it was like, where did happen all these indicators? And like, well, only some of them are available at certain levels of geography. What another cool thing you can do is to, as Beth was saying, to look at two different data points at once and see how they're related. Sometimes that can be a little hard on a map to do. But one of the ways we've done it here is to overlay circles on top of these geographic areas. So here we're looking at, and you can have the same level of data availability here to select an indicator. Here we're looking at, so the fill layer is looking at percentage of children ages 0 to 5. We could change that to something more meaningful. And the circle layer is looking at the percentage of children living in poverty. So it's showing if you have a really dark region that also has a really large circle, you're gonna see areas that are more Hispanic Latino than other areas, and areas that have large numbers or large share of children living in poverty.
I'm wondering, David, if we could maybe do an example. So for the X's, that's what we've been calling them in our internal team, but I heard people say ECSA instead of EXA. So we know that a good portion of that will be talking about your priority populations. And since that is something, since Elmo has a lot of census information in there and some new county level indicators that we've added this time around that may be of interest to help answering those questions that you might have about where are members of your priority population, what geographic area might they fall into. I wonder if we can maybe do like a hypothetical example. So thinking about community characteristics, perhaps maybe your Latina population is one of your priority populations. So that can stay as it is. And maybe you're interested where that population intersects with another priority population that you are considering looking at in your hub. So maybe we could go into the second category of risk and resiliency and maybe pull out foster care. I know that foster care is one that we have newly added this time around. As you can see, as we go through, there's quite a few. So we have the percentage or the number you can switch back and forth between of foster children in foster care under 18.
Mhm.
And we could take that from the county level or the early learning hub region down to the county level.
Oops.
Oh no, I broke it.
I think we did have a request. I don't know, Brenda, if you were wanting us to see an example of county level data. There was a chat, or
Oh,
whether that
yes.
was specific to the health complexity data.
No, I was interested in the example that was up shown by hub level, what it would look like with
Oh.
county level, that toggle.
Okay, yeah, I think we can show that.
Sure, the county level, great. Great, I can go back to the foster care one. Oh, so this is what it looks like at the county level, is that correct? Is that what we were trying to look at?
Yeah, we were switching from the hub level down to the county level. So this is now there. And if it you have to reset if it disconnects from the server.
Yeah, and we're still refining all these new variables too, and making
Mhm.
sure that those are all cleaned up and ready to go. So I think that was just a little bug on that one
Little hiccup.
that we'll fix.
So that was,
Could you just toggle back again to show the hub level data?
Sure.
Right, so there you can see the hubs. And then if you change it back to county, all of a sudden you have layers by county.
County. So both of those will change back to the county.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, and also I just wanted to highlight too on this that you're able to see more information about the source as well down here, to be able to learn more about where that data comes from.
cool. So that was one of the examples that I was thinking of, maybe seeing where different priority populations, how they might interact or intersect. And some of the indicators, as David was mentioning, are available down to a very granular level. So maybe let's pull up an example in the risk and resiliency. We have percentage of children who speak a language other than English.
So
5
Lizzie,
to
just
17.
just a quick question on the foster care number. Is that a number, or is that a rate per 1,000 or per 100,000, or is that a percent? It's not labeled in terms of what those ranges represented.
Yeah. So if it's not called out, it would be a percent. And
Well, so this one over here,
One?
this is
Okay.
7 per 1,000.
perfect, perfect.
Yeah.
Right. It's called out over there. Perfect.
But we can, but that's a good catch that we can make this clearer on here for this particular measure. Again, we're still working out the kinks in some of these new measures to make sure that we've got all the right labels. But appreciate you pointing that out.
Yes. And the link that you'll be using is going to be the what David calls a sandbox, which means it's where all of our newly updated pieces are. It's gonna they're there. They're not published on the ELD website yet. And one of the things is we really want to make sure that all of the new indicators are doing what they're supposed to do. So feedback like that and questions and clarifications like that, that's fantastic. That's going to help us a lot in making sure that it's really ready to go.
So just to give a really concrete example, if we were to click on a particular county,
Sure.
yeah, so like Lynn County, it's going to give us some demographic information because it always does that. That is Lane County. Oh, okay. The one you had, sorry, your cursor was over Lane County.
Oh, sorry, Lynn. Yeah.
So it doesn't have the foster care information. That's what I was curious about. It just has the one factor. So it's not going to tell
Right.
you the number of children in foster care while you have that toggled.
Although I think it should, and so we can add that.
Okay.
Okay, the
Great.
exam, oh,
Could do you, I mean, yeah, can we, sorry.
what would you choose? A question in the chat. Would you choose child poverty at the county level? There is a range rather than a number of children. Can you explain? Yes. So these ranges, as I mentioned before, the census data, and David, feel free to help me explain this if I'm not getting at it right. The census data is an estimate. So it's an estimate with a range.
Yeah, it's like, sorry, I can explain it more quickly. I think,
Yeah, go for it.
on political polls, when people give a margin of error, it's, within plus or minus 2 or 3 percentage points. That was that range that we had. So the census, the American Community Survey is a really big survey. And so they calculate in their statistics, based on their sample size, the margin of error. And so that one that we had last time was the range from the lowest estimate to the highest estimate that they thought. And so now we've removed that, so it's a little clearer that it's just the point estimate. Although the margin of error still exists in the data, it's just we're giving it more clear guidance for y'all. Is that a good explanation, Lizzie?
I think so, yeah.
I was
Yeah.
just clarifying too, that if to pick a point, we recommend the midpoint
Yeah.
in the range.
Right, and that's what we have here.
Let's see if we could pick that language one, and if we could maybe remove the circle layer and really dig into one indicator. So if we go to select a category, and that'll be the oh no, it's here. You're right.
Yeah, it's under
community
this one. I think it
characteristics.
was not under the risk and resilience.
Right.
So.
Whew, that was a mistake that maybe I should think about as something that indicated a moment of assumption and bias. Wow. Okay. So community characteristics, children who speak a language that is not English. If we go, this one is available at many different layers. So we could look at it as a summary of what's happening at the hub level. So that's bringing it up. We could bring it to the county. And then we could also bring it down into our census tract and school districts and elementary school zones. So you can really begin to get quite specific in your geography for some of these broader census level pieces of information.
Can you just show the zoom function too, David?
Sure. So you can also zoom in on the map here. You can also toggle, or if you have a little wheel on your mouse like I do, you can do that. I think I also have the ability to look up at a specific county and have it zoom in there. If you wanted to just go directly to the county you want. And then also be able to reset this. If you wanted to, I don't know how well you're gonna be able to see this on my screen, but if you can also export this view of the map really easily as sort of a landscape or a portrait to be able to take a quick, you can also just do a traditional screenshot if you know how to do that on your computer, but this is an easy way to do that. I also wanted to highlight that you can also add, sometimes you want to, look at a lower level of geography like the school district, but you're really interested in a particular boundary. So if we wanted, I don't know all my hubs that well, so let me, so if we go over to the Marion and Polk Early Learning Hub, and we wanted to, let's say, look at school districts within that. We still have on this black line the outline of the hub, but we also can look in more detail at the particular school districts there.
We had a question in the chat around comparing current data to previous data to see trends.
We're going to get there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, I think Evan has raised his hand. Is there a question you want to?
Yeah, just, I know with census data, it's always going to be pretty limited when we try to talk about the sub 5-year population. I wondered, have you guys ever engaged with like the school districts themselves? Because I know some have demographers because they have to figure out incoming kinders and class sizes. And I've always wondered what tools they utilize to get a good sense of their enrollment and whether that's something we'll ever be able to like leverage as a data point. Is right, because they have to be concerned about incoming counts and where those kids are. And it feels like I feel like they have a level of granular, at least information that doesn't show up in things like ACS. And I wonder how they reach those conclusions.
That's a great question, Evan. And the answer to your question is no, we have not. I imagine there's also people at ODE who do that sort of thing. But yeah, that's a great suggestion, actually. But that gets at that they're really trying to predict, like on a year-by-year basis, how many kids are going to move into which particular schools, which is probably a level of detail that this kind of mapping is not going to do, at least not now. Maybe the next round, maybe the next iteration.
Yeah. I just think it's such a hard population to get a fix on, and that's a big point of focus for them. Right. So be curious to know what we can learn.
Yeah, my guess is there's models that take into account like mobility and number of births and that kind of information. Yeah, Margie.
So I know with our largest school district that oftentimes they're looking at birth demographics and where housing construction is occurring, and also the incoming demographics of the kindergarten classes, right. Because those are their youngest population and probably the best indicator of even those younger than that. So, but again, we tend to get a lot of concentration of different communities where they co-locate together. And so that creates kind of, again, focal populations in certain geographic areas.
Yeah. And I think all of these questions are going back to sort of what I was saying earlier on, which is this kind of administrative data that's fixed point in time and draws on administrative population data sources is always going to be your first brushstroke, right? It's always going to give you some information, and maybe it leads you to other places where you need to go deeper, whether that's deeper with a particular school or district and what they're coming up with in terms of their data, or deeper in terms of a group of families to understand what's going on. So, again, it's always just one piece of data can never tell us the whole story.
Great. And should I move on to these, to show so we also have the early care and education providers point data from, I believe 2020. Learn more about it here. As of March 2020 from Oregon State. And this data, there's a lot of providers, and so the map really doesn't show you the individual level data. It tries to cluster them together so that the map doesn't just crash on you. But it does provide you with some information on particular the location and information about the particular providers here, and also the ability to filter by provider type, regulation status, type of care, age group served, and SPARK rating.
Yes, and this is a utility that unfortunately is not going to have updated data. This is, as Beth said in the chat, pre-COVID. We are hoping early next year to be able to coordinate with OSU and provide an update around supply, so that Elmo can be more of a timely support around supply. And when that happens, that tool will be, I'm sure, much more helpful, and it already is very interesting, but also more interesting with newer post-COVID data.
Great. Should I move on to the over time? So we do have the ability to look at a select group of indicators over time. And so for a bunch of different levels of geography. So is there, Lizzie, which should I choose a particular one or just?
Let's see. Why don't we poke around since I didn't have an example prepared for
No,
this?
that's fine. I think, I mean, one of the things we could look at is just child poverty, which has gone down a little, a little bit over the past few years even. And so this, again, similar to on the map, you can look at it as a percent or as the absolute number of children living below the poverty line. And then in addition to that, we can look at different levels of how this is trending for different levels of geography. So you look at it how for a particular hub that's been trending over time. So provide some, and again, you can also export this if this is something you want to share with folks to be able to look at that over time. And it tells you more about the sources for each of the years. Some of the census data is the one where we have the most, we have 3 years of data. Some of the other metrics have 2 years of data. Ones that we only have one, you can just look at it on the map. And that's where that information is. Great. Lizzie, do you want me to dig into some of the other ones or just leave it there for now?
How are we doing on time? Maybe we could just quickly show the different the
Sure.
other two analysis.
Yeah, so we have a couple other analysis tools that I won't dwell on too much. One of them is around looking at school readiness and some of the factors that are associated with early school success, and really being able to look at community risk factors and figure out where are the outliers in terms of these are in these green dots. These are areas that where are we looking at here? We're looking at elementary school zones across the state and being able to highlight those that are sort of over or are doing quite where third graders are doing lots of third graders are meeting their benchmarks, but also have large numbers of children living in poverty. So you can look at a couple different types of questions there that you could answer and look at a couple different risk factors and how those are associated with school readiness and success. We also have this tool that's looking at access to early learning programs. So it has a couple different questions that one could answer. So this one is looking at which communities have high levels of community risk and resiliency factors and lower levels of available childcare. So it's looking at the sort of the crossover between these two factors here. So this is looking at, so under community characteristics, looking at the percentage of children living below the poverty line, and for access to care, looking at the percentage of children living in poverty who have access to a publicly funded childcare slot. And so this table allows you to sort of look at that relationship over time. If you wanted to look at for a hub, to be able to look at those that have both high levels of children in poverty and as well as high levels of children who have access to a slot. And then those that have both high on one and low on another, and low on one and low on another. So I'm happy to answer more questions about that. I didn't want to get too deep into that given the time constraints.
And could you show the data download function? It looks like we have till about 2. So if we could show the data download function, and then we can go on to the next parts of our time.
Sure. Great. So if you're on the map page and you are looking at a particularly interesting data point that, let's say you wanted to look at the hub region. And so if you go over here and say download the data on the map, it'll start off with the selections that you've already made. So it's assuming like, oh, you probably want the early learning hub regions. If you don't want that, you can change that. But you can also, if you wanted to look at a particular hub, you could also look at that if you wanted to just look at the data for one of them. But if you wanted all the data, or all of the regions, you could just leave it as is. And then also, how much data do you want? So the default will be, we'll just give you the data that you've selected on the map. So if you selected 1 or 2, it'll just download those. But if you wanted all the data points for the Early Learning Hub region, you could also get that. And so then you just have to check the box to agree to these terms, and then download the data on the map. There's also the ability to download the childcare providers that are, if you wanted to look at a particular region and download just the childcare providers who are in that region. Again, this is March 2020, so I'm not sure how useful that will be to y'all, but that feature is there as well.
And it just loads it into an Excel spreadsheet with labels so you can see the data and then pull it in if you have another format that you want to analyze it or look at it. Okay.
Great.
Anything else
Stop
with-
sharing my screen?
Yeah. Okay. Any quick questions about Elmo at this point? All right, I'm going to go back then. And Lizzie, when I should know the answer to this, but I don't. When is the updated version, the version that we're kind of demonstrating today, going to be posted for the hubs to be able to access?
David, I believe that the current link that we have, the sandbox link, is the link that the hubs will be able to use. So we can share that link today. In fact, I'll put it in the chat right now, and I'm sure we can send it out again via email.
Okay, so just a little bit around next steps. So, and upcoming resources. So I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, ELD folks, that in mid-October, you're going to be providing some additional data around key preschool programs, a lot of P's, OPK, Preschool Promise, Relief Nurseries, and BP. What is BP?
Baby Promise.
Oh, Baby Promise. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dylan. Dylan will be sending you the data. And you could talk about this instead of me. Obviously, I am not that familiar with what's coming from the ELD, but information about number of children served and number of slots. Is that right?
Yeah. So that's a good summary. So yeah, we'll be providing some information about prior year, kind of how many children were enrolled within these different programs and different demographic breakouts, kind of as available, and end of year reports from the different programs, and then also current year slots for different programs and license types. And then Carmen is also going to be sharing that kind of general supply data from FCCO.
Okay. And then right now, many of you were on the call last week where we shared some of the high-level findings from our family listening sessions. We have 3 reports now available at that link, which is the Early Learning Division site where we have all the PDG assessment information posted. So we have 3 reports, one with 6 focus groups of families with infants and toddlers around their early childhood care and education needs and experiences, the LGBTQIA+ families with young children, and the families whose children were suspended or expelled from care and their experiences. So those are available to you. Obviously, it's not hubs or region specific, but it does give you some nice insights into families from really quite a range of geographies across the state and what their experiences have been. So it's almost like the opposite level of data from what we're talking about now. It's like from the super high level, 1,000-foot, 10,000 feet level data that's in Elmo to the like experiential information that we got from talking with families. In November, we will have the PDG provider survey report. That's a survey of a couple of thousand licensed providers in your state that's really focused on training and coaching needs of those providers. And then On the 1st, I believe, is our plan. We will come back and visit you again. And Dylan, Lizzie, and I will be talking about some ways to answer questions about the data that you've received from the hub or from the ELD around childcare enrollment, and the numbers that Dylan will be sending you, what the strengths and limitations are of that data, and then maybe thinking a little bit more about how you could integrate that more up-to-date information about capacity and access into some of the ELMO available data. And we also were curious, and I know some of you put this in the chat already, but in thinking about your EXA or your ECSA plans, if there's pieces of data or questions that you have about data sources that we might be able to help you with, it would be great to hear about those. And since we're almost at time, we'll take questions, but if you have more specific questions, put them in the chat and we'll capture those and circle back with Hillary and Michelle about that. All right. I think that is all that I have. So we can pause there for just quick questions.
There's a couple questions in the chat box, and we do have, like, we have at least 5 minutes, so
Okay.
I can get to them. Let me read them out, and Hillary, let us know when we get time. Let's see. So Margie asked, is the publicly funded program information going to be at the zip code level or what geographic level? Dylan, do you want to unmute and speak to that?
Yeah, sure. So I just put a quick response in the chat, but the data that we have is going to be at the site level for some programs and at the grantee level for other programs, just because that's the way it's been collected. So for site level, it will be easy to roll that up into like zip code level counts if you'd like. For grantee level data, which is primarily the OPK program, it's a little bit more difficult because those serve pretty large areas. So that's where we're at right now.
And Beth, I think your last question there to the group was what other support might be helpful around data or data sources. People are welcome to send questions about that later, but we do have some time. So if there's things on your mind, jump out, feel free to ask about those now.
Carmen, one of the things that we did with some of our data mapping in our region and looking at providers, and we looked at desired capacity versus licensed capacity, because not all providers want to provide care for as many children as they're licensed for. And we also looked at by census tract need, so number of available working adults in the household, so who was there to care for the children, so that we could get a comparison of number of slots available versus potential need and map that for census tracts. And that might be something that you look at statewide with census data.
It's a great suggestion. That's super interesting.
I can send you some examples. We did it with an intern through our COG, and it would be really interesting for other hubs to have access to that.
Yeah, I mean, if it's in the census data, I think it's something we can get access to and manipulate. I'm saying that and hoping that's true, David. We, meaning David, can do it. Thank you, Christy.
And Margie, I see your comment about situations that are multiple Head Start and OPK providers who work in multiple hub regions. And I think that we can have a conversation too. Would invite you to get a meeting set up with Dylan as well to look at what we might be able to help with there.
I would super appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, I know that adds some complications, so we can think together. I know you're not and we have more than one hub in that situation, so.
And I would second that as someone who shares a Head Start program with Margie that crosses both of our hub regions.
Yes, and anybody who's got OCDC operating in their area, it's spaghetti.
Yeah.
I remember trying to figure that out last time we did this, and it was like, oh no.
We ended up having to just go back out and survey all of our Head Start providers in order to get any kind of reasonable data, because what we could get from the state system was not usable.
Is it too late to hit some sort of reset button that makes all of the zip codes, school districts, county lines, et cetera, across the state line up, and then we just deal with the repercussions afterward? Because it would help our data moving forward for sure. Jillian has a question in here. Met with 2 ODHS district managers. It showed me bar graphs of how foster care has changed over time, and also have reports for each district as to overrepresentation populations in foster care by specific population. That is a great partnership share there.
That is a great partnership share. And what a great way to wrap up this discussion. Thank you so much, Beth and Lizzie and David, for presenting on Elmo. If you have more questions, keep putting them in the chat. That's totally fine. I'm going to invite Nancy to join me. I saw that she's here. There you are, Nancy. This is Nancy. I'm going to go ahead and let you introduce yourself, and then go ahead and feel free to jump right into your presentation.
Okay. Hey, thanks for letting me join your meeting. It's so good to be here, and it's so good to just, you know, be listening to all of this amazing early learning talk. I miss it now that I'm at ODE. So thanks again. My name is Nancy Hout, and I'm the Jumpstart Kindergarten Education Specialist in ODE. I started in late June, so I am doing a lot of listening and learning. I was previously working at Portland Public Schools, managing the early kindergarten transition program. What I learned from that experience was just the critical importance of collaborating with early learning hubs, with Head Start, Preschool Promise, and childcare providers. What I really learned deeply during that time was that sometimes our systems stop and start really abruptly, creating kind of a cliff effect for parents. And that's why I think it's so important for our systems to come together and build sort of a supportive bridge from early learning to kindergarten. And so I thought it was so cool that Oregon identified that need and allocated, you know, federal funding for that purpose. So I'm going to share about 6 slides about Jumpstart Kindergarten. I'm going to explain the program, the funding, and the kind of support that ODE is providing. And then I want to talk about just collaboration and question and answer. And so I will share that I'm really terrible at both presenting and monitoring the chat. So if someone can help me with that, that would be great. So let me share my screen.
Nancy, I'll keep monitoring the chat for you.
Thank you, Carmen. Let's see. Here. Okay, can everybody see that?
Yep, we see it.
Great. So what is Jumpstart Kindergarten? It was modeled after EKT, the Early Kindergarten Transition Program, and EKT back in 2010 was modeled after Head Start. So the program is really steeped in early learning beliefs like parents and caregivers as the child's first teacher, and the importance of authentic and culturally affirming family engagement and centering equity. So the goals of Jumpstart is to provide students and families with a great transition from early childhood into kindergarten by setting a positive by setting a foundation for a positive school experience. And that's through connections and relationships, through collaboration and partnership with families, and for really smart, culturally specific outreach and engagement. So there are two big goals. One is student-centered. And so the idea with the classroom time is that it's, it's joyful learning, it's connection, it's, really focusing on social emotional skills, not on getting to the next letter sound and the next unit in the curriculum. And it's really about helping children feel like they belong in their classroom community. The requirement for our grantees is a minimum of 30 hours in the classroom, and that's classroom in sort of the larger sets, inside, outside. And then the partnership-centered goals is about, really wrapping our arms around families before the first day of school. So that's really helping families navigate the school environment, the whole district system, building positive relationships, family to family, family to school staff, and just meaningful connections and building all of those relationships in a positive way, and experiencing alignment from early learning to kindergarten. And the requirement for the family engagement is 10 hours, and that's minimum, just like the 30 hours for children. That's kind of the floor of family engagement activities, and partnering with their early learning agencies to coordinate enrollment and outreach. That's a lot, kind of just said. So the funding, so this is funded by ESSER 3. It's called Set Aside Investments under the American Rescue Plan. And Jumpstart is one of 11 key investments. I've linked all of those investments here if you wanted to look at that. And this is a non-competitive grant. So it wasn't something where districts applied and got in or didn't get in. Instead, the ODE created a system that identified need, and of our 197 districts, I think it was about 30 bubbled up as districts that have what they call combined disadvantage criteria. I want to say I really don't like that deficit phrase, but that is how they dealt with the data. The funding is estimated at between like 600 to 700 per student. And it supplements, what many districts already have with KPI funding for their kinder camps, EKT. And the funding it started in May. It came in fast and furious. So they received, I think, the award letters in early May, and many of them stood up their Jumpstart program for the first time in July or August. So last summer was just a real scramble. And it ends September 2024. So that's 3 summers. I want to say that last summer, some of our districts implemented very innovative programs. For example, Hermiston partnered with their child care provider to provide before Jumpstart and after Jumpstart child care until 7 p.m. because they have a lot of farm worker families. Another just could not, in such a short period of time, hire kindergarten teachers for the classroom, and so instead hired their SPED team in school psych. And this is an area, it's Phoenix Talent in Southern Oregon, that experienced the fires, and there's a lot of trauma around that, and that actually ended up being a really fantastic sort of lemonade out of lemon situation. We're asking districts to braid funds from whatever resources they have, so that one, we can know the true cost of this and to begin planning for sustainability. So just to get into the weeds here of what this combined disadvantage means, it's kindergarten students who are in any one of the student groups here. So underserved ethnicity, as well as children receiving special education, experience houselessness, English language learners, or migrant services. I do know that in many of our districts, they focused first on children receiving special ed and migrant services, and that's how they filled their classroom, and then expanded out from that. So additional requirements are, it needs to be in Title I schools, even if it's a district that has a mix of title and non-title, this is only for Title I schools. The outreach needs to be focused on the focal students that I was just describing. It should be hosted at the school. It's not a hub model. Provide transportation, meals, cannot charge fees, staff with kindergarten teachers from the school, and collaborate with hubs and Head Start. And this is the definition of focal students here. So the Jumpstart districts, we have 29, Canby is pending. And it really is a range across the state. What I will be doing when we have, I'm starting that with our first meeting of the school year this Thursday, is I'm organizing them by county, which really organizes them by hub, so that I'm hoping when we have a team meeting, we can invite you all to join in helping our districts think through how to really support their families from early learning into schools. So I think it's exciting to be able to use, your regional hubs as a way for Jumpstart districts to connect with each other. So this past summer, we had 18 of the 30. Some of them were unable to launch Jumpstart so quickly, but that equals about 63 schools and about 1,400 students. And then next summer will be quite a few more, with 99 schools and about 2,300 students. And I will say that Jumpstart is in counties that are considered preschool deserts. I know in talking to folks in Southern Oregon and Eastern Oregon, having so many kindergarten students who did not have a preschool experience is very real. And I think it's why so many are so excited about this, this funding.
Brenda, do you want to, I'm going to read your question. Feel free to expand. So Crook County has had a program for several years and we're in place this summer, and wondering why they might not have applied for funding.
I can go ahead and answer this and then I can follow up later, but this wasn't an application process. This, wasn't a competitive grant. It was based on sort of poverty factors and experiences of families based on a criteria formula. And so some districts, bubbled up based on the amount of funding we had, which was a total of about 11 million. And then, as the formula, as the, how do I say it? The eligibility was based on their, on the criteria, and those that were under the criteria threshold did not get the funding. Sorry, that was a little bumpy. Are there any other questions? Okay. So what is really wonderful about ESSER 3 funding that comes out of the ARP is that it's really focused on getting the funding out to districts. It's less on compliance, reporting, and all of the things that a lot of school districts experience with, say, Title I funding. And it's really all about support. So my job, I do receive reports and they do have to meet their requirements, but my focus is on how can I support these districts to have a really high quality program. And so I surveyed the districts and asked, what types of technical assistance or professional development are you most interested in? And the thing that came up that almost all of them said was a priority was effective outreach to focal students and families. And so what I heard from districts, I guess it was Hermiston and Jervis, was that they really struggled to, to know where their families were. So the start of the school year came and there was a lot of families that were just registering at that point. And there's always that feeling of frustration. I remember that when I was at PPS, we had these extensive transition programs, and then families that we thought would have really benefited from it were signing up for kindergarten on the first day. You'll see that they are also really interested in connecting with their early learning partners. They want help knowing how to do that. And they also want to address the needs of special ed students. And then around professional development, they were really interested in learning how to create culturally responsive family engagement activities. And what I know about early learning is that, Head Start and Preschool Promise, they know how to engage their families effectively. It becomes very mysterious in what's, in the K-12 setting. Districts really struggle with that. It's just not been their area of expertise. So I'm always wondering about ways to collaborate and to share information. And so that brings me to district and hub partnerships. And I'm very conscious of capacity issues, but I just want to share what I would love to see to support families, to support the folks in your programs and districts. One thing that I'm hoping will work is to have planning meetings in January and in April, and these meetings would bring the districts, the hub, the Head Start, and the EIECSE folks together to start thinking about how can we have a really inclusive, supportive Jumpstart program. I meet monthly with grantees, and I'm always looking for opportunities to just connect us. Also, the Connect to Kindergarten or Kindergarten Roundup, it's a great opportunity for early learning partners and school folks to get together. Sometimes you can team up. If Head Start is having an event, a representative from the district can go and vice versa. Based on the challenges that districts are having with registering families, I always think it's a great idea to combine kindergarten registration and pre-K registration. Like, why don't we do that more? Because families have both. And it's so much easier when we can, support families in together with whether it's, even if it's with different, in different buildings and different systems. And I love the idea of in Head Start having Jumpstart, having the Head Start teachers enroll students in Jumpstart Kindergarten during the last home visit. And this all may be happening. I think another idea is to align transitioning activities in general with pre-K and K to reduce family burden. Here, let me help you sign up for registration for pre-K. At the same time, I can support you in registering your child in kindergarten. And as always, I think it would be so helpful if early learning partners coached schools in how to create culturally affirming family engagement activities. This could be, just, sharing and inviting them to an event that preschools feel has been very successful, just so people can see it and get their eyes on it. And then I think districts need help connecting with their childcare partners, their CBOs. I think the childcare piece is particularly mystifying to districts, and just getting some support that way would be really helpful. And as I talk through this, I know that you all have, you're overloaded. You've got a lot on your plate, as do districts. And I know there's support that's needed to bridge all of that. And that's how I see my role.
Yeah, Nancy, the chat box is exploding with enthusiasm for aligning our pre-K and KVNs and pulling this into that fold as something to be included in there as well. Also thinking about and let me just pause right there and just say before I jump into the other more specific things in the chat box, I want to make sure we get to that and we have a little time too. But just to say to you all as hub directors that I had the pleasure of working with Nancy when I was at Child Care Resource and Referral in Multnomah County, and she was at PPS. And yes, I think it was Brenda who said, this sounds like the work funded previously by Oregon Community Foundation and Pre-K 3 and that P3 continuum. Molly was also part of that with us, and Francis, and we did a lot. There's been a lot of really great work that continues in that region that was guided by that P3 vision, and that continues. So yes. Is one of the reasons that I'm really excited to have Nancy in the position that she's in is that like yourselves, she is not interested in reinventing the wheel, but really wants to think about how it is that we can like braid and leverage what's there. So when she and I and Hillary and Michelle have talked about the Jumpstart Kindergarten, we've said like there's so many things that are already happening out in that the hubs are partnered in via KPI, for example, that is very similar to this. So rather than saying like, I am very excited, this is a place where OD is coming in and saying like, we have something that supplements that we can add to what's already going on and use those same natural touch points that are being used to engage in things like EKT, that are being used to help think about like, what are we doing if there's a gap between when Head Start ends in the spring and when kinders enter, that we can use those same touch points to look at how Jumpstart can fill that in. And that because it is a limited program in 2 years, 3 years, Nancy?
Yeah, through 2024.
That we can use the early learning partnerships that already exist to think about how to best make use of what's happening at Jumpstart, but also to plan for a lasting impact on that. So I just want to put that plug in and like encourage you to continue to reach out with these collaborations. I know it isn't in all of your counties yet, but I also know that you all have a lot to contribute to the conversation about how we can make it work in counties or districts where it does exist. I've got a question from Kelly Poe. I wonder about isolated school districts where there are no ECE programs available. We're working in Unity, Adrian, and Wallowa to identify some kind of kinder transition or preschool opportunity. Would like to see how to qualify these districts, seeing Ventura and Jordan Valley in need as well, and can they qualify with very small populations?
Yeah, what's frustrating is that the group of districts is been decided on. It's the 29 that I listed, and there's not going to be an opportunity until the legislature decides this is how we want to see funding happen. We don't really have that opportunity to see who we missed. Many of the districts that are in that group are, one school shops where the superintendent is also the principal of the elementary school and the Title I coordinator, and it's just unbelievable. So it's a real mix of rural, small, large, suburban. And my job too is to try and get, to capture these stories and how it makes a difference and how we are collaborating and bridging with the early learning division, so that, maybe this can be in the future just part of what we do in the state. We have these transition programs. That would be a great use of these funds if we can make that case.
Danny, I'm not sure the intended usage of the word interesting in your comment. I know you said I find it interesting that Canby is pending as that is the one place in Clackamas County where we have all 3 Head Starts and a large PPS site. But thank you for sharing information. If you have anything else you want to chime in, Danny, now is your chance.
I mean, I think interesting means all the meetings that it can have in that way. Mostly I'm just really glad to know that because it's going to have questions for me come up from that. So I appreciate knowing that before it comes up. So just it's between our rural areas, you know, we do certainly have lack of services out there, absolutely 100%. But there's all those programs are harder to enroll for, and some of our expansion programs are very nearby this round. So I anticipate some contention around preschool age offerings in Canby and Molalla in the next little bit here. So just interesting for me to ponder.
Carmen, I do see a question from Skydra. Were all districts in the state assessed for eligibility? And the answer is yes. There's, you know, a long sequential list from the top who, you know, had the most, you know, the highest level of eligibility based on the criteria all the way down to the lowest for the 197. I guess I love to just have a question and just people unmute and popcorn out. These team meetings where we would convene districts under their, you know, organize them by their hub region. And I would be facilitating, you know, how we would do outreach and just ways that you would provide that alignment between systems for families. Is that something that feels like you all can be a part of those meetings? Again, it would be like January and April to just tee everything up. I see Renee has a thumbs up. Thanks, Renee. Oh, a lot of nods. Anybody concerned about, you know, this might not have the time or might not be a good use of your time? I am one of those wanting to hear all thoughts.
Not necessarily not have the time or not a good use of time, but I only have one school district on the list in my hub region, and she serves on the Early Learning Hub board, and we already have very strong active partnerships. So I don't know if it would almost be replicating meetings that are already in existence.
Which district is that, Christy?
Lincoln County School District.
Oh yeah, wow. No, that's I noticed that Morrow County and Lincoln County, there's some that are just very embedded with their hub, and Lincoln County is certainly one of them. So I agree. Yeah.
Nancy, there's a great comment from Emergy in the chat that there's plenty of district that could there are districts that could benefit from the Jumpstart professional development offerings, even if they don't have Jumpstart. Is that something that we would consider is opening that, or even opening it up to our early learning partners so that we're all in the same space?
Yeah, so 2 kind of deliverables that I have this year. One is an early registration toolkit modeled, Molly, kind of after the Multnomah County one, where we just create kind of a PDF with templates for, you know, banners, yard signs, kid stickers, flyers to just kind of do the get out the vote campaign for early registration. That's one toolkit. And then the second one is actually like a best practices toolkit for Jumpstart around family engagement, kid curriculum, culturally specific outreach, kind of the why behind having Jumpstart. And so those toolkits will be available, you know, across the state. They'll just be on the website. So that's something that I may be reaching out to you all for support when it comes to kind of best practices for outreach and family engagement. So yes, I love the idea of coming away from this program after funding ends in 2024 with, you know, a lot of tools for everyone.
Thank you so much, Nancy, for all of that information. It sounds like really great work that you're doing and that you'll be able to share. I just want to wrap up the meeting on time. We're going to do it today, folks. I want to thank everyone so much for coming, being active participants, and just sharing your time and expertise with everyone. I love this group coming together. It's one of my favorite monthly meetings. Don't tell anyone else that so they don't get jealous. And also, we really appreciate all of the hard work that you do. So thank you, everyone. I will be sending out an email tomorrow with the recording and the slide deck from Nancy's contact info, and the Elmo link. So you'll have all of that in one email. Okay. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Thank you again so much.